Hello, everyone. This is the Rochester Environmental Commission. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, REC meetings are being held virtually and there's no in-person attendance. REC meetings are open to be viewed by the public, which is why this meeting is being broadcast live on the city's YouTube channel. However, there is no public participation in these meetings. The Rochester Environmental Commission is an advisory committee that reviews projects that are classified as type 1 actions under seeker. And the commission issues recommendations to the lead agency. In this instance, the lead agency is the manager of zoning. This meeting is pretty informal and it consists of 2 parts. The first is we'll have a brief introduction from the applicants who will describe their project. And we will do a Q&A and talk a little bit about any environmental impacts and talk a little bit about the seeker forms. And then the second portion will be a deliberation and a vote for a recommendation to the lead agency. So REC is made up of all volunteers. So I want to go around the room and have everyone introduce themselves. Please give me your name and a little bit about your background. I'll start and I will call on individuals so that we're not all speaking at once. So I'm Tom Kiesier. I'm the Development Review Coordinator in the Zoning Department, and I'm also staff to this board. So first, we will start with Rosemary.
I'm Rosemary Jonitz. I've been a member of the board for many years, and I am an adult educator, a trainer. I am an OSHA authorized outreach instructor, and I have my own consulting business.
Thanks. Bob?
Bob Schellinger. I'm a facilities designer, industrial settings, and recently retired, but I'm staying with the REC.
Elizabeth?
I'm Elizabeth Primus. I'm a commission member, and I've worked as an environmental scientist and other things in that field.
Carlos?
Carlos Perez, and I am the owner of Gallica LLC, which is a business and health, safety, and environment consulting company here in Rochester.
So let's have introductions from our applicants as well. We can start with Peter.
Good evening. My name is Peter Landers. I'm the principal of Landers Management and one of the developers of the Aqueduct District.
Heather.
Hi, I'm Heather Landis. I'm a project manager with CJS Architects. And on behalf of Peter, we submitted the site plan application, which is what we're here to sort of review today, the FEA from that application.
Zena.
Hello, everyone. I'm Zena Lagonegro. I'm with Passero Associates. I'm the Director of Entitlements and Permitting, and I am assisting with the environmental review component of this project.
David.
Hi, I'm David Cox with Passero Associates, and I'm the civil engineer for the project.
And James.
Yes, good evening. My name is Jim Costanza, and I'm the president of Costanza Enterprises, and I'm a co-developer of the Aqueduct project with Peter.
Thanks. So a little bit of quick business before we get started. This is surprisingly the first REC meeting of the year, even though we're already in September. The type 1 list has been kind of changed in recent years, so we have a lot fewer type 1 actions to review. So as this being the first meeting, we have to nominate and elect a chair. So I believe Rosemary will be able to, I believe she wants to be the chair again this year. So I think we need a nomination and a vote.
This is Carlos. I nominate Rosemary as chair.
This is Bob. I'll second that.
And we can vote. So Carlos, I'll call your names. Carlos,
Aye.
Bob,
Aye.
Elizabeth,
Aye.
Rosemary.
Aye.
All right, we have not a new chair, an existing chair that will continue in this role. Okay, so we can get started. Our applicants can give us a description of the project, and then we'll go from there and move into some Q&A.
Good evening. My name is Peter Landers, and I'm one of the developers of A50EB LLC. And it's my pleasure to give you some background on the Aqueduct development or redevelopment. As you may know, the Aqueduct has a very rich history, with Lawyers Co-op having been there, starting in the Aqueduct buildings. And subsequently, it was most recently occupied by Thomson Reuters, who continued their legacy. At one time, they had 770 employees working downtown. And in the last year, Thomson Reuters vacated the Aqueduct. So when we looked at this opportunity as developers, we recognized it was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to breathe new life into this iconic building, to create something special and make a major economic impact on downtown. Its prominent riverfront location is at the epicenter of the Rock the Riverway project as well. So there'll be a lot of synergy there. My partners, Rob, Sands, and Jim, are excited about the opportunity to revitalize this historic, iconic landmark into a vibrant and inclusive mixed-use community, a unique live, work, and play environment. We envision creating a workplace destination with a technology hub, a hotbed of innovation that will promote economic growth, creating hopefully up to 500 jobs over the next 5 years, while attracting young professionals to the downtown area and other people. We envision it being a diverse and inclusive community, a mecca for creatives and artisans and local small business owners. Aqueduct will provide spaces that support tech development by promoting synergistic uses such as co-living and co-working. It will appeal to younger workers who desire a sense of belonging, community, and desire socialization opportunities. It will become a riverfront destination. As you can see in the photo, the Aqueduct buildings are prominently located right on the river, and they will benefit from the Rock the Riverway plan. So as I mentioned, there's a lot of synergy there for us to work together with the city and the state to realize the vision. It'll become a historic destination. We will be preserving and accentuating the historic architectural features of these buildings in our spaces. We will celebrate the Mercury Rising statue and the Frederick Douglass statue in Aqueduct Park. In terms of the project itself, there's a total of about 180,000 square feet. And our redevelopment plan includes a mix of office, residential, and retail uses to provide amenities. And what's really unique about this campus, it is a campus, is that there's 4 major buildings and a park. So you have the ability to do a lot of different things to create synergy. So what we are planning on is a mix of apartments. As I mentioned, we plan on having about 97 residential units. And most of those will be affordable units in the $800 to $1,500 a month range. So we're going to do smaller micro units. There may be some additional units that we're going to do on the top of the main building, what's called Building 1 here, that would be a little higher price. But for the most part, it's an affordable market that we're addressing. We would have 80,000 square feet approximately of office space, and most of that office space would be in the main buildings 1, 2, and 3, although there'll probably be some office or co-working space in building 5 and some office space in building 7. So the partners plan to make a major investment here to redevelop the campus. Our immediate problem, though, is the site is very, limited in parking. It doesn't have sufficient parking to meet the needs of both office users as well as residents. There's only 47 spaces currently on the site, and we're here tonight before the board to request your consideration for a parking structure that we would put right where the current surface lot is. And the idea being is that we can do 2 things. We can double the capacity of that lot, but in addition, we can utilize valet parking to further increase the parking capacity. Right now, as I mentioned, there's about 47 spaces there, but we hope to reach 150 to 160 on site using valet parking. The other things to be aware of, there's going to be amenities as part of the development to make this a unique environment. Things such as wellness, fitness, lounge areas. We hope to do a rooftop terrace on the main building because of the views are just incredible. And we also think there's a big opportunity to activate Aqueduct Park with pop-up music and art events. So what we can do here is create a culture of tech people, young people, people that are working in small businesses, micro enterprises, because we will have some hopefully food and beverage venues here, not large scale, small scale, to serve the campus as well as the neighborhood. So it'll be a very diverse, I think, eclectic kind of community. So we're looking for that call it that synergy that you get when you bring all different types of people together, that creativity. So that's my overview. If you have any questions. Jim, do you want to add anything as far as the parking?
Well, I would only add that our timing in acquiring this building was impeccable. We closed about 2 weeks before COVID came into all of our lives. And so this was a challenging development project prior to COVID, and COVID made it more challenging. And we convene meetings, a weekly meeting among anywhere between 10 and 20 people. We're devoting a significant amount of energy into this project because of the complexity, the fact that it's 7 buildings, some of which are separate. But I wanted to just convey that the fact that we're now in a kind of post-COVID world, we're actually seeing opportunities because we're starting to understand some of the design elements that could give potentially an advantage for not only the co-working, but the work from home. So as more understanding comes down, we're beginning to look and understand that potentially this was something that could give us an advantage in terms of our design plan. So maybe that's a silver lining for us. But this is a very exciting project for us. It's challenging, but I think we have the kernels of something very special for the city in this location.
Thank you, Jim.
So I will jump in and clarify a little bit. I went over this with the committee on email, but the parking structure is going through site plan review. So that's the big kind of focus of what our office is looking at. But we also wanted to look at the overall project from a seeker standpoint. So the overall project is it's more of a rehab reuse. All those buildings are existing. You know, they were occupied at one time. So that type of review from a zoning standpoint is not too complicated. But we did want to wrap it into the seeker review so that we have kind of an overview of the entire project. So, you know, focused on the parking lot, but the other buildings are in the seeker review. I have 3 topics I would like you guys to address, and then the committee can kind of talk about their questions too. So one is impact on the river and drainage plans for the parking lot. Will there be any impact on the river? How will the parking lot drain? Any impact on the historic structures, obviously the other buildings that are in the campus that are being rehabbed. Thoughts on how this would impact those, as well as the you know, rehab of the neighborhood. And then any additional info on floodplains. I think the parking lot is out of the floodplain, but maybe the park is. So those are my kind of overarching topics that I'd like the team to talk about a little bit.
So yeah, I think I'll jump in on the architectural side, and I'll ask that our team members from Passero weigh in on the drainage and floodplain. So in terms of the current trajectory for the project, for a tax credit project, we are currently listed at the state level. We're on the state register of historic places, and we're looking to get on the national register. And this factors into the overall project in which the clients, our owners, are interested in a tax credit project. So what that means is the modifications that we do make in terms of the rehab or reuse of the buildings will have to be reviewed at the state and federal level through SHPO and NPS. As you know, the SHPO and NPS review process is rigorous, and there are several opportunities, I think, for us to make modifications and alterations that align with their preservation briefs. We've also actually started communication with SHPO representation relative to these improvements we're making to the site. So they are kind of our allies as we move forward with this. So obviously the city of Rochester also has requirements set forth for this type of rehab and reuse, which we find that SHPO and NPS aligns with those as well. So in terms of the site, or in terms of the site plan application documents you have in front of you, in the eyes of SHPO and NPS, the kind of existing use of the surface lot in now favor of a parking structure is generally permitted. When we go to submit for the tax credit project, which requires, of course, the SHPO Part 1 and Part 2, all of the site improvements that we would provide would be a part of this necessary package. So again, in terms of the current project in front of you, the site plan application document showing the parking structure, because it's an existing parking lot and its current proposed use is the proposed use that we're providing is another parking scenario. We believe we'll have full acceptance of that. Again, so the project site is on the state register. We are seeking national, and we will continue to work with our SHPO and NPS correspondents as we continue both the initial phase of the parking structure project and the future phases of the rehab. Tom, let me know if that's a sufficient response to your question there.
Yes, perfect for the historic resources. And then drainage, I don't know how the current lot is draining and how will the proposed drain.
Yeah.
And I've had the picture up a couple times that shows the 2 levels, because I think this project's a little hard to understand without the image. So maybe describe what's there now and what will be done to create the new lot.
So the existing lot slopes from Aqueduct towards the river, and there's a couple trench drains and a catch basin So yeah, the top diagram shows it pretty well, that all the surface runoff that lands on the property flows from Aqueduct towards Grave Street and ties into an existing combined sewer there. So under proposed conditions, there is no increase in impervious. It's exactly the same. The only difference is we're capturing that runoff on the top deck and we're bringing it down to the lower level and then tying into that same exact combined sewer. So the drainage is going to the exact same space that it is now. There's absolutely no change in drainage. And then as far as FEMA, the floodplain elevation is around 492. The parking lot structure is about the lower parking lot structure, so the basement level, is almost 7 feet higher than the floodplain elevation. So we're up a good ways from it.
Thanks. Did some of the committee members have some general questions that they wanted to ask?
Question. This is a 2-story parking structure, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and the top level is open, yes?
Correct.
How will you remove snow in the winter and where will you put it?
Right now, I think we would look to provide additional comment to that effect. We will likely modify our plans to show a snow storage solution. As you know, yeah, sorry, Tom, if you could go to an overview of the site plan. So as we are discussing, the current proposed use of the parking structure project is using valet parking, which means, and you can kind of see on the diagram here, the sort of really long lines that we're showing. And that's an effect to try to show you how we're going to stage vehicles through the valet use. So during inclement weather or through winter, there's the possibility of snow loading on the private parking area. We would just not elect to park cars there at that particular location. We have not yet detailed if snow melt systems will be a part of this project. That's also a possibility. And we also believe that we would do additional snow storage directly adjacent to the proposed West Plaza area that we're showing at the bottom of the screen here. So there's definitely flexibility for snow storage on the private property.
I have a question. Does this, and it's hard to see, and I don't know if you've looked into it, but does it diminish, enhance, or no change access for the public to the park? Is it going to change access?
So if you go back to the plan that you had up, Tom, and maybe zoom out just a tad bit so you can see more of the extent, great. So one of the things that we're trying to do is we're actually trying to hold the parking structure away from the sort of historic exterior that is the building 1 north wall. If you're familiar with the site, or you can go back to the Google Earth image, there's a series of historic structures that exist along that north elevation there. And so what we're doing is we're actually creating a brand new access way that's adjacent to that elevation that we think will promote folks from going from the East Broad Aqueduct intersection, now formally down to Grave Street, which is direct access to the park. As you know, the Rock the Riverway Improvement Project has big plans for East Broad, which is, something we're very excited about talking with the city, and we have been talking with city representation about their future plans here. And that's why our proposed West Plaza Terrace area, where those 3 parking spaces are on the Google Earth, is really critical to not only fitting the Rock the Riverway project, but also for the owner generating interest and getting tenants in. It's going to be a real hub of activity for folks to come here, orient here. And what will be nice is we can also preview a little bit of the extensive historic character by drawing folks in along that historic north elevation down to grades that then gets you to the park. So we're looking to, you know, I think the historic character is there in the buildings. There's several examples of strong character, but really allowing folks visiting the neighborhood to experience it up close. It's a really exciting opportunity. So you can see we have made some allowances for somewhat of a distance away from the building for folks to approach the building and walk down. And then I think, yes, the Google Earth imagery along Aqueduct Street, you can kind of march up the street and see for yourself those kind of historic vestibule areas. One in which we call colloquially the castle. It's unlike most entry vestibules you'll see nowadays. So.
But Heather, the access to the park though is going to be just as good, if not better, right? To Aqueduct Park.
Yeah, so as you can, Tom, I don't mean to direct you. Please tell me if you don't wish me to. But if you,
please do.
If you go to the intersection, if you go to a person view at the intersection of Banks and Aqueduct, if you just place us right there, so go screen right. Once you hit that, nope, go, I guess go right here. Keep going, and stop right there. I think we should be okay here. And if you go ahead and pan right to see more broad, less of, there you go. Yes, so once this comes into focus, you'll be able to see the East Broad street elevation, which I will note as a part of the Rock the Riverway development plan. The idea is to actually take that down a level, right? So creating a almost uninterrupted street elevation into what will be the proposed entry to building 1, right? So again, really exciting. We're anxiously awaiting the Rock the Riverway discussions because it's great to be a part of the narrative and ongoing design conversation. And directly to the left, you can kind of see some of the ivy colored vestibules here. So this is the historic entryway. And this is actually critical to SHPO and NPS to maintain and highlight, which our current path will do, because again, we're maintaining this kind of access even with the parking structure coming into play. So obviously this is an existing shot of the surface lot parking that is on site right now. And you're seeing buildings 1, 2, and 3. You see that bridge kind of overhead, and that's also what's represented in our diagrammatic section. I should say.
All right, so that's where the parking lot's going?
Correct.
Okay. And then there's some kind of overpass there.
Right.
And that's going to be covered by the parking lot?
No, it's not. So that's to remain intact. Tom, if you could go back to the site diagram or the sections that we showed.
Yeah, I think I remember seeing the overpass in that picture.
So the plan, right? Yeah. So the bottom section and sort of to the right. I'm gonna have to move my screen here. Go all the way to the right, Tom. There you go. So we have a note that's that line of existing pedestrian bridge there. So we're well below that existing bridge. And of course, I think given our current phase, which is the parking structure, I think, and of course the narrative with SHPO and NPS, this tunnel, this bridge is to remain as a part of this project. We're not modifying it in any way.
So it'll look flat. It'll look almost like it looks today, right? So instead of the surface lot being slanted, it'll still be a surface lot from Aqueduct. So it won't be like a structure up in the air. It'll be flat.
Correct.
Right, Tom, that's right, because we're going down under, right? So for this lower level.
So I'm a little confused as how the cars get in there. How do they they enter?
So there is no internal ramping to the parking structure, which means you enter from Aqueduct to get to what we call the surface level or the second floor of the parking structure. And you enter for the lower level on Grave Street. So the site access is on the two different streets.
Okay, I think I get it.
If we had internal ramping to get from upper level to lower level, we would have no room for parking.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, I see.
right.
Okay. So Grave Street is just lower. It's just naturally lower.
Yeah, it's perfect for a 2-level parking structure.
Okay.
It was well suited for a scenario like this because of its difference in elevation between Aqueduct and Graves. Yeah.
I'm curious about how emergency vehicles will be able to get to this area because Aqueduct Street dead ends at Broad Street.
Yes, I'm sorry. Yeah, if we could go back to a site plan, Tom. So while we get back to an overall site plan, so obviously we're in the what we call the first phase of the redevelopment of Aqueduct here. And so, sorry, Tom, if you could zoom out just a tad bit more. So we believe, just as Thomas Reuters employees once accessed the site, they would new tenants would actually access the site very much the same. So they would access it via Aqueduct Street from either Broad or Exchange or Main. And I think we would just anticipate that with the valet solution or system, they would be greeted to at the entry point and then have their vehicles valeted. Similarly, at the lower level, folks would enter via Race Street. At this particular time frame, they would enter via Race Street and then access Graves from that way. So again, they would be approaching the site very much the same way they have been via Aqueduct Street. It is a possibility that in the future, and this is actually an ongoing conversation we've had with Eric Frisch as well with the city in terms of the Rock the Riverway and of course overall site improvements elsewhere, that maybe a portion of Graves could be directed two-way so that possible access could be provided at that point. But again, I think we have been corresponding with the city of Rochester about big picture ideas and other site improvements that both help the Rock the Riverway project and also our development team here. But that's, I think, down the line. So to answer the question, we believe that folks would still access the parking structure, both levels, the same way they have been previously, Aqueduct Street via their Broad Main Exchange, and then Race Street to get to the lower elevation of Graves.
So the entrance to the upper deck would be large enough, for example, that a fire truck could come into there if need be.
So right now, the parking structure is not designed to have fire truck loading. We've had conversations with Ted Kuppinger with the Rochester Fire Department about this issue, and he was gracious enough to have a couple meetings with us to talk about the site logistics. And so he's aware, and he had asked the same question, can I get a truck on here? And we've come to the resolution that we can't really achieve that due to the immense amount of loading that the trucks have. So we've arranged with him we've had conversations with him about providing fire department access along the existing elevations of the buildings. So him and I went through and actually determined all the FTC connections that are elsewhere on the site and determined hydrant locations. Interestingly enough, there's not a hydrant anywhere near the intersection of Aqueduct and Broad. So we'll have to remedy that as well. And so when we come back for the official permitting process, you will see all of those necessary fire department connections on these plans. I will tell you that Ted has been a real ally and asset for us. He's had several conversations with us at this point, and we really appreciate it at this part of the project phasing.
And the fire department is on our site plan review team. Ted is on that team. So he's, involved with this review, and whatever he needs in order for it to be safe and meet the fire code, that will be included before we get, to a final approval regardless.
I was just concerned that the upper deck would allow passage of a fire truck, but it sounds like you're looking at all those issues.
Yes, one of our biggest priorities when it comes to S2 type use of a parking structure is the real risk that cars can pose for fire safety. And so we're, again, very appreciative of Ted being able to talk to us at even just a very early design stage, which he was in, week one, helping us out. So, and we have had a couple comments from him, and which we intend to address as a part of this process.
When you designed this, did you consider to enhance the drainage, with maybe some filtration, natural vegetation, drainage and that kind of thing before it went to the sewage system? And since it's a new structure, that gives you an opportunity to improve the, all your drainage systems so that the water is going into the sewer has, some type of purification before it goes through.
So at this time, I don't think we've had anything other than what's beyond or what's required by the building code. So we can definitely take note of that. I think we would be able to follow up back with you if you want to, I guess, I don't know, formally ask the question. We can follow up with a formal response as to how we're achieving anything beyond minimum code.
Oh, here's another question. Do you have in anywhere on the whole campus there some place to store bicycles? Like maybe some storage area in the parking lot, or some kind of storage lockers, places to lock up bikes, that kind of thing?
Yeah, Peter, if you'd like to speak to this, or I can.
Well, we're planning on bicycle storage, right, Heather? I mean, it's part of our plan. So why don't you just embellish that? Absolutely. We want to, Elizabeth, we want to be pedestrian friendly, bike friendly, alternative means of transportation versus cars. In terms of, the environment. So we're also looking at an electric charging station, kinds of things for hybrid vehicles. So shared parking, shared cars, that's our future, right? So go ahead. I'm moving around a little bit, but we're looking at all those newer, call it modes of transportation, how people get around, because
yes,
we're trying to minimize the parking, but in this situation, it's just that, our experience is that the office tenants require so many spaces, for their employees when they go to work. And maybe that'll change with the remote hub work, this new work at home model somewhat, but it's still going to be a need. So Heather, maybe talk about bicycle storage. That was the question.
Yes, so to be blunt, there is no provided space within the parking structure itself for bicycle storage. We intend to handle that internally. And we actually intend to handle it internally right now in building 1, directly adjacent to the west terrace that we're showing on the screen here. What's ideal about the character of these buildings is a lot of them have lower level spaces that are conducive to storage type amenities. So In this particular instance, we have about, I believe, 1,300 square feet dedicated right now for bicycle storage. Obviously, bike counts vary based on the infrastructure or the type of bike storage cabinet or anchoring that you provide. But there is tons of locations within the buildings to help alleviate the need for or to provide or suit tenants that require bike storage. So at this time, nothing in the parking structure. It would be something we provide internal at this point.
Okay, so because you said there will be retail and that kind of thing. So there's the tenants, but then there's also people coming in to use retail and that kind of thing. So, yeah, so they, if there was some type of thing to store their bikes, lock up their bikes, that kind of thing. I've also seen places like hotels or even apartment buildings where there's sort of like a shared bikes.
Right.
Yeah. So, that's enough, because I mean, since we're talking about parking, this is some ideas to minimize parking. So, yeah, so there's even, that's an idea too, to have a set of bikes that people can check out and check in.
Yes, that's a good idea, Elizabeth. And
Mhm.
we did that up at 3 City Center, which is the old Frontier building. Well, we actually had Pace there in Zaxter.
Which I
The
loved.
bikes. Yeah, so that makes a lot of sense. And as you think of this site with the park, as we get into the details of landscape design, right? I'm sure we'll be thinking about, maybe there should be a bicycle thing down by the park, right? So people can just access the, get a bike at the park or come to that spot.
Yeah.
So-
I mean,
so
I
we'll-
was at a hotel the other day that had 6 bikes for the patrons of the
Right.
hotel, and you just checked it out and checked it back in. So you could, you could do that for the residents of the building and the people at the that for the offices. And it could be theirs only. Like I know Pace and Zaxter's for anyone in the city, but that could be just
Dedicated,
for them.
yeah.
They can share. Yeah.
Good idea. No, I think that's something we'll definitely look at.
Cool.
Any other questions? So I do want to look at maybe 2 or 3 items on the part 2. So we will do the part 2 as the lead agency in zoning. But I think it's good to take a look at a few of these. So we are generally answering no to most of these questions, whether there's going to be a significant adverse impact. So there's a number of questions on the part 2. So I just want to pull up a few of them that we may check yes to the initial question, which then brings us to a couple additional questions. So one of them is impact on historic and archaeological resources. So the question is, the proposed action may occur in or adjacent to historical or archaeological resource. So we would check, yes, it may occur in or adjacent to a historical or archaeological resource, but then when we go through the questions, I envision us answering no to actually to all of these. So I just wanted to make sure that everybody was comfortable with that. So does anybody have concerns about the impact on the historic resources, or are you happy with the description that was kind of given, that they're going to preserve the existing buildings, reuse them? All right. One of the other ones was impact on critical environmental areas. This is a similar situation. This was actually the big trigger for this being a type 1. So it is close to the river, but the buildings that are, most of the work that's right next to the river is already developed with buildings that are being rehabbed. So this work, most of it is, I think, beyond 100 feet, but a little bit of it is a little closer. So the question is, the proposed action may be located within or adjacent to a critical environmental area. So we're going to say yes to that question, but then we had felt that there would be a small impact to that. It's a little to no impact to the river based on the reuse of the buildings and the fact that there's an existing surface parking lot there now. They're kind of increasing the capacity without making a big impact from the surface. So does everybody agree with that assessment?
Yes. Thank you.
And I think I had one more. Oh, there is one question that was, I think, answered earlier. I had a question about the floodplains. And I think that David answered it, that the first floor, actually the lower level, is going to be above the flood zone.
That's correct.
So that actually won't, I was previously going to ask about that, but I think you answered that question. Okay, so does the committee have any other questions? Otherwise, we can move to deliberations, a vote, and a motion.
I just want to be sure about the subsurface, the soil and any of the contamination that was mentioned. It looks like it in the past has all been remediated, and you're not changing any of that. It didn't look like any of the column footings were going down to bedrock. Spread footers, is that correct?
Yeah, so maybe Tom, if you could go back to our building section. I believe our last page in our drawing documents.
Here.
Yes, and I think if you zoom in on the upper, I guess, yeah, just zoom in on one of the columns in the footer. So correct, yes, we're proposing spread footings. We've also, additionally, as a part of the structural solution for this project, are looking to reuse an existing retaining wall that faces Aqueduct Street. So there's a good portion of the project excavation that we are doing that's actually going to reveal some really interesting existing stone wall along the aqueduct perimeter. So if you are interested to take a look at that time, you'll see that a portion of the rear wall will actually be just exposed stone. So again, I think our current strategy is a post-tension concrete structure with spread footers through a conventional column grid. Post-tensioning obviously is a critical aspect of our parking structure because it gives you the resilience and longevity. Post-tensioning is like the ideal structural solution for parking structures in our climate and for someone who's looking for a parking structure that's going to weather well and age well.
Okay, so whatever underground drainage, wherever the groundwater is going, you're really not impacting that too awful much. Is that a correct assumption?
So as a part of the new construction of the lower level elevation, we would need to provide below grade drainage as a part of what's required for new builds. So we would handle any permeable water in the conventional sense. We would ensure that we're meeting all minimum building or all building codes required by us and the state to achieve that. So any groundwater mitigation would happen through subslab drainage. At this time, I think, we have actually done some preliminary borings. We've also investigated some manholes here So we have we have some information about the current water on site. And so again, this information that we've achieved prior to formal permit drawings will only serve us to make sure that we're providing appropriate drainage, below slab drainage.
Okay, so I won't go any further with it. You're not impacting the bedrock. No geological studies were done to see if nothing's bearing on the bedrock, then it's not going to bear this additional weight, and no likelihood of cracking or whatever to make some of that contamination from the past. It's basically going to sit where it is, where it was. And it was remediated, and they did the soil gas testing I saw in the write-up. So I think I'm okay in that whole subject matter.
Well, Bob, just to clarify, the information that was provided in the environmental assessment form about the contamination.
Yep.
The environmental assessment form asks if you're within 2,000 feet of any site on the state list, and a whole bunch of lists. There's remediation, there's BOA.
Yep.
So the reports that were provided in the environmental assessment form were for former locations on Court Street and Andrews Street, not for this site specifically.
Yeah, and I just wasn't clear on it. I get it.
Some of them are actually on the other side of the river, so there wouldn't be any impact on this site specifically. If there were, we would have done a little bit more research, but all the reports came back that they were far enough away that I wasn't concerned.
Yeah, I'm fine with it.
Good.
I wasn't totally 100% clear, but now I am.
Very good.
Thanks. Anything else, or we could have a motion and a vote?
So this is Carlos. Based on the document submitted and the discussion in this meeting, I motion for a neg deck or a neg deck.
I would like to talk about a recommendation for I think they call them bioswales for the drainage.
Okay, usually I think we finish the vote and then we create our list of recommendations.
Okay.
That's what we usually do.
Okay.
Okay. So I've seconded Carlos's motion. Tom, do you want to call for a vote? Would you like me to?
You can go ahead.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. All those opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, so moved. All right, now we can do all this. So Elizabeth, what are you considering?
Yeah, I was just thinking of bioswales for, I think they're called bioswales, where the drainage would go through some like plantings before it goes to the regular sewage system. So it would get a little bit of cleaning before it goes.
That is fairly difficult with being that it is a concrete structure. It is a concrete, parking deck. So all parts of the parking deck are going to have cars driving over them, driving over it. So trying to put a bioswale with cars driving over it is in a concrete structure is very challenging.
Okay, so has anybody thought about? I don't mean for it to be where like if you look at the public market, the bioswales are there's the parking lot at the public market, and the bioswales are outside of it, so that when the water drains from the parking lot, it goes through the bioswales and then to the sewage system. So, and I believe that was designed by Pastero Associates. So,
yeah, in that instance, there was some grass areas that we could drain the drainage to. This, it's pretty much concrete or paved surfaces, building to building, street to street. There's not any grass areas that we can drain to put those bioswales in.
Okay, well, my recommendation is to look into it. That's it,
Okay.
just to see if it's
Other
possible.
types of technology that's available to accomplish those goals, right? Rather than saying specifically one thing, we could recommend that they look at other options that would be
Yeah.
feasible in this site to accomplish that goal.
Yes,
Okay.
You're just
Yeah.
looking for something that pre-treats before discharge.
yes.
Got it.
Thank you. Help with that thought.
Anything else? Any other recommendations from any other members of the commission?
Nope.
No? Okay. Tom, anything to add?
No, I think that's it. Thanks everyone for coming and participating in our Zoom meeting. It's a little different than usual, but I think we're adjusting and figuring it out. So
Thank you all very much.
thanks,
Thanks,
everyone.
folks. Nice job.
Thank you all. Thank you.
Have a
Thank
good
you,
evening.
everyone. Have a good evening.
Have a good evening. Yep. Thank you.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.